Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your service and testimony. Last year around this time, we had done essentially what the Joint Chiefs had requested of the Congress. Our Appropriations Committee moved a defense appropriations bill out of committee. It was very bipartisan. I think only one dissenting senator onto the Senate floor. Last summer, we moved to vote on it, and unfortunately, it was filibustered. So we went to the usual playbook of a CR, omnibus at the end. A number of us want to try and do that again, not filibuster it, but get a no-kidding budget out on the floor, voted on. Would that be your preferred course for the men and women in the military, that we do that? Admiral?
Yes, sir. By far the preferred course to pass a budget using normal procedures.
General?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Secretary?
I would say it's the only acceptable course, sir.
Okay, well, we're going to try and do that, and hopefully there won't be another filibuster, and hopefully there won't be another continuing resolution. That's what we should be doing, but it's good to hear that that's exactly what you want, and the other courses of action are not helpful to our troops. Isn't that correct? You're all nodding?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Senator, I think that would go back to reinforce what the CNO said. I think it would restore confidence in the rank and file of all men and women in the armed forces, that they understand that what's happening in this city, they get it, that we get it, and that we're...
And they're watching, right?
They're watching.
A lot of us think that,
they watch
like that
this,
filibuster
everything
last
we
year,
say and
people
do.
like, oh, nobody saw that. The troops saw that, didn't they?
You would be amazed, sir, at how insightful and tuned in your sailors and Marines and soldiers are. They are watching this closely. The Commandant and I both get out around the world to talk to forward deployed forces. In an all-hands call, a junior sailor will stand up and ask these questions. This is this sense that we don't get it that's arising. So I fully support that, sir.
Thank you. Wanted to just mention, a number of us, Chairman, myself, have been working with the service chiefs and DOD on the importance of the Pacific laydown of our forces, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force. As the chairman said, hey, we need to get this right. We need to make this strategic, not tactical. If we don't get it right, we're going to be paying for it for the next 50 years. I've talked to Secretary Mattis about this, and I just want to mention we look forward to working with you, because I do believe it needs to be military, executive branch, and this committee in the Congress to make sure we get that right. So I just want to mention I look forward to continuing to working with you, the other service chiefs, and OSD on this important initiative to getting our Pacific forces laydown correct, because a lot of us don't think it's optimized right now. It's in some ways been static for decades, and we want to work with you on that. Admiral Richardson, I want to talk a little bit about the Arctic. The Department of Defense in January this year came out with a new Arctic strategy. It was directed by this committee and the Congress. It's much better than the old one. It talks about FONOPS, opening sea lanes and lines of communication and commerce, transportation, protecting the sovereignty of the Arctic, the resources, particularly as countries like Russia and China continue to build up forces and capabilities in the region. I read the Arctic's 2014 roadmap put out by the Navy's Arctic roadmap. As we pursue a fleet of 355 ships, in this strategy, it talked about the importance of looking at ice hardening some of these ships. What ships would you see we would need to look at ice hardening? And do you believe this Arctic strategy needs to be updated now that the Secretary of Defense has put out a much more robust strategy that was directed by this committee?
Sir, I think that the answer to all your questions is precisely the effort that we're undertaking this summer as we refresh our strategy in light of the National Defense Strategy review that we're doing.
So are you going to update this strategy?
We'll update that strategy, yes, sir.
And in terms of ice hardening ships, we have a 355 ship fleet that we're looking at.
Right.
What kind of ships would you believe we need to ice harden so we can conduct the kind of FONOPS that the current strategy lays out, but to be perfectly blunt, we don't have the capability to do it.
It's absolutely true. We don't have the capacity or the capability. And so I owe you those answers as an output of the strategic review, sir. I don't want to give you a guess right now, but it would be those types of ships that would have decisive impact. So
And one final question. During your confirmation hearing, you mentioned the importance of working with the Coast Guard to cut through the red tape to work on upgrading and building out an icebreaker fleet. Right now, we have 2 icebreakers. One is broken. The Russians have 40. They're building 13 more. They're controlling that, what General Mattis called strategic terrain of the Arctic. Have you made any progress with the Coast Guard on that?
we have made some progress. We've formalized our arrangements in terms of acquiring icebreakers. We've set up an office to get started on that. We're looking at now the requirements for that icebreaker. We're bringing all of our shipbuilding expertise to make sure that we support the Coast Guard in executing their mission, and so we've made some good progress this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Should a icebreaker cost $1 billion, Admiral?
Sir, it doesn't seem that way, but we're working with the Coast Guard to review that.
And take 10 years to make?
Sir, it goes back to the need to get faster in acquisition.